Good evening. It is now the appointed hour, excitingly. So welcome to this meeting of the Employment Committee. I'd like in particular to welcome James Hall, who is doing the, I think you're taking the notes tonight? Indeed. So James joined in December, so I'm sure he'll do a great job. And if he doesn't, then Rachel's here to keep him on the straight and narrow. Good, right. So apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Ashbury and Councillor Thorne. Councillor Glowett is substituting for Councillor Ashbury, and Councillor Gordon is substituting for Councillor Thorne, although he's currently running a little late.
Right. Okay. And the minutes of the previous meeting, is everybody happy with that? And happy that I signed them now that I found my pen. Good. Okay, I'll must take that as a yes. I'll try it down there. Right. Okay, has anybody got any declarations of interest that they need to make before we go any further? No? Good. Sorry, I should have welcomed everybody watching online. I apologise for that omission. Right, so that leads us into the Speak Up policy and procedure, and I believe you're going to deal with that, aren't you?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Yes, the Speak Up policy is our whistleblowing policy, effectively, and it is an item that comes to this committee on an annual basis for a refresh. I need to thank the Chair, who has already given us some really detailed feedback, and in fact I need to let the committee know that some of the feedback has been really interesting for us, because the Chair asked a question about section 8.1, which is on page 14 of your pack. And the feedback was around the procedure for raising issues to the Head of Legal Services. We realised when we reread the paragraph that actually there is a procedural error in that paragraph, that it's actually the HR manager who keeps the record and who arranges the investigation. And so thank you for that feedback, and we will be changing that in the procedural in the procedure. We did also ask the question whether that represented a material change to the policy that might need to go back to the Joint Staff Consultative Committee, but we felt it was a procedural change rather than a policy change, and therefore, and we checked that with the monitoring officer, and he was okay with that. So the rest of the changes to the policy are relatively minor, stylistic and tweaks in the main. So yes, open to any questions or comments or feedback about the policy. Thank you.
Good, thank you for that. I'm sure you'll do this anyway, but I think we should just ask you formally to advise the chair of the Joint Staff Group about that change you just mentioned, just to make sure that the staff representatives are aware of that. Do we have any questions arising out of that? The answer appears to be no. Good. Right. So we're asked, I think, to simply recommend this policy to the council or the executive. Which is it?
It's to adopt the policy.
Oh, it's to resolve. We don't have to recommend it to anybody. How about that? So we're asked to resolve that the amended Speak Up policy is attached to Annex A to this report be adopted. Is everybody agreed? Thank you. Right. So that leads us then to politically restricted posts. And Sally, I think that's you again, isn't it? Thank you.
It is indeed, Chair. I think I'm in the hot seat for all of these policies.
Oh, good. There we are.
So the politically restricted posts, the statute that is the core of this policy has been, as you can see from the policy, in existence for some time. And generally speaking, we don't normally feel we need a policy when something is written in statute. However, we have developed this policy from that statute because we were aware of one or two minor incidents in which it would have been helpful for the staff and supportive to them to just have that clarification whether they were or were not in a politically restricted post. So we've written this guidance document to help staff understand whether they are or are not in a politically restricted post, and you'll see that there's a list of posts that would be politically restrictive. What our plan next to do is that we are going to adopt this within people's role profiles of the relevant posts, and we're also going to write to staff who are on that list that you can see in the policy, just to clarify what the guidance is and how it applies to them. So it is a new set of guidance, this particular document, but as you can see, based on legislation that's been in existence for a while. Again, happy to take any thoughts, comments or feedback. And again, thank you, Chair, for your feedback already on this, which we will accept and adopt.
Thank you. Once again, I think this is a fairly straightforward policy, all good common sense. I think most people would agree. Any questions? Councillor MacDonald. Oh, Leader of the Council, sorry.
Please. Councillor MacDonald's much better. Thank you, Chair. Just really a question around the description of the sorts of things that I'm trying to think the right terminology, politically restricted posts can't do. I notice the legislation was done in 1990. My feeling is that the world of social media was not as progressed as it is now. And I'm just wondering whether those words, particularly around speaking or writing, capture actually what people tend to do on social media in a holistic way, and if not, whether there's an opportunity to add an extra bullet that in some way captures the spirit of the legislation into the policy, which is not to, I guess, endorse in any way political activity if you're holding those posts. I hope I haven't been too oblique in my comments there.
You're about to find out, I think.
I think that's an excellent point. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I think it would probably be more appropriate to put something in the social media policy that refers to this policy and sort of cross-refers, because the social media policy deals with what you can and can't write on social media in some detail. So with your permission, I think what we'll probably do is take that point away and review it in the social media policy. Now, the social media policy was relatively recently reviewed, but what we can do is just have a look at that and maybe just put that through on the work plan later in the year, just to make sure those policies are cross-referred.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, if I could just come back briefly, Chair. So the sort of things I'm thinking about is forwarding, liking, promoting. I don't know what the other terminology would be that would be appropriate, but I think it's within the spirit of what this is trying to say, yeah?
Yes, I'd agree. I think there is actually case law that says that if you like or share a post, you have effectively commented on it, if that makes sense. So I think we should particularly comment on liking and sharing posts, and we can certainly pick that up when we write to our members of staff.
Okay, once again then, we're asked to resolve that the politically restricted posts and guidance policy as set out at Annex A to the agenda report be adopted, and I'm sure the officers will note the point just made by the Leader of the Council. Is that agreed? Thank you. That takes us to a very important policy, and unusually one that I couldn't find any comment to make on. So once again, Sally, if you'd deal with the carers policy.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chair. So the next three policies are actually all linked quite closely with the People Strategy, which, of course, this committee agreed in October. The carers policy is a very important piece of work for us because it starts to pull together in one place all the information that officers who are carers need to know how to support their caring requirements whilst they're in work. It is only the start of that conversation because when this went to joint staff pointed out, and we had quite a long debate about whether carers' leave should be paid, and this policy doesn't at this stage recommend that. Now, the reason for that is because we need to make sure this policy and our family-friendly policy, which handles dependents' leave, are aligned. We can't have one policy that says one thing and a family-friendly policy that says the other. So we are intending to bring this policy back again, probably in the summer. I think it's on the summer work plan, with the family-friendly policy. We're also very aware that there's new legislation coming through in April for carers, and we just also want to make sure that the legislation and the policy completely align. We think it does, but until the legislation is actually in force, we can't be absolutely certain. So that's why it's also on the work plan, just in case you were thinking, why is she bringing it back again in 6 months' time? But we wanted to get the policy off the ground to really flag to the officers how much we cared about carers, if that makes sense. And again, welcome any feedback.
Thank you. I thought I'd spotted a typing error later in the agenda on the work programme, but it turns out I didn't, because the carers policy appears in the work programme, and that's the reason why, as you've just heard. Any questions or comments? No. Good. Okay. Oh, you sneaked that in just in time. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I was trying to see if somebody else could talk for a change, so sorry about that. Section 5.1, emergency time off for dependents. I'll put my cards on the table here. I've been this person. I've been a carer for a couple of years with 2 people with dementia. I found that paragraph a little bit harsh as an employee, looking at it from an employee's perspective. I was wondering whether we could soften it to reflect the fact that we would try to work with the employee to allow them to recover their time within a reasonable period. By doing so, they wouldn't have to worry about losing pay for emergency time off. That was my concern on that one. It just felt, compared to the rest of it, it felt a little bit harsh.
Sally.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Yes, very good point. And of course, employees, this describes the legal right for employees to have that reasonable time of unpaid time off work. But of course, employees may use annual leave, flexi leave, or time off in lieu. And I think you're right, it might just soften that. But we do need to have that in because that's a legal right. But I'm very happy to add a sentence at the bottom to say there are options for paid leave, of course, and that is annual leave, flexi leave and so on. So yes, and of course it's this very paragraph that will come back again in June, hopefully to say, and we're giving you some paid time off, depending on affordability, etc. Thank you.
Okay, you content with that? Thank you. Right, and once again, we are asked to resolve that the carers policy is set out at Annex A to the report be adopted. Are we so agreed? Thank you. Which leads us on to the very detailed, I might say, recruitment policy. And is that yourself again?
It is indeed.
Okay.
Thank you so much. This is a refreshed policy, so we had this policy in existence and procedure before, and I do apologise for the length of the policy and procedure. There is a reason why it's so long, and that is because this is a procedure that within Surrey Heath is owned by our line managers, with HR giving support, guidance and advice. And it is for that reason that it has such a lot of detail in it. We are aware that line managers would greatly benefit from some training in this area. So one of our plans is that once this refreshed policy is adopted, we also accompany it with some training. It's of course an incredibly important part of our attraction and selection, again linking to the people strategy, that we get this right and that line managers feel confident that they can attract people into the council and that they know how to do that. Most of the tweaks are stylistic and relatively minor. There is one important change that I just want to draw the committee's attention to, and that is the career grades in section 7. Now, we've had career grades for a while. So a career grade is when you recruit someone who is the grade below what was expected of the post. And the idea is that you attach a development plan with them so that they get into their substantive post within a specified time period. This was debated quite considerably at joint staff, who were very keen that this should be fair and consistently applied, and also questioned whether it should necessarily be linked to qualifications or whether it could be linked to delivery, experience and so on. So we did change that paragraph quite a bit following joint staff and their feedback. And again, we very much welcome this committee's thoughts, considerations and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions? I think that's you, Councillor MacDonald. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've just realised why. It's because my colleagues have been in the joint staff, so they probably had their opportunity. I noticed in 3.1 and 3.2, it deals with the double approval. So let's, for argument's sake, call it the managerial approval and then the executive approval related to roles. I'm trying to find the page, because there is a few pages, but there's a flow chart that doesn't seem to show the double approval. I'm not trying to be too pernickety, but it might just be helpful, because a picture says 1,000 words after all if the flow chart reflected that. I'm sorry, I'm getting there. Right, yeah, it's Appendix 2. Just says authorisation, executive head, underneath the middle box. Page 95, is that helpful?
Yeah, we're very happy to take that away and amend that.
Just because it's a lovely flow chart and it just helps people. Is that fair? There's a double approval, isn't there? Yeah, thank you.
Any other points? No? Okay. Once again, we're asked to resolve that the recruitment policy be adopted. Are we so agreed? Thank you. This brings us to the interestingly named Agile Working Policy, which I assumed had something to do with going to the gym every morning, but in fact has nothing to do with that whatsoever, as we will now learn. Thank you.
Yes, this is, of course, the policy that covers our ability to work in different places. And the policy was originally written to reflect pandemic conditions. One of the things we wanted to do when we refreshed it is to put it into sort of business as usual, if you like. there was the changes were again mainly just tweaks and stylistic and grammatical changes. There was nothing terribly new about this other than to sort of take out references to the pandemic. Interestingly, at joint staff, the liveliest conversations were around, I think it was paragraph 5.4, that referred to dog walking. And that wasn't a paragraph we'd actually changed in the refreshed policy, but having spoken to joint staff at length about the wording, we did change it so that it reflected a sort of, we felt, more professional approach, that if you had a break during your day at home, you had to record that break using our iTrent system, which is the way we record our time. And you can see the amended paragraph there. But yes, that was directly as a result of the feedback and discussion we had at joint staff. Again, would welcome any feedback at all on the policy. Again, very important policy from a people strategy and attraction perspective. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Once again, comments, questions? I'm taking that as a no. The Leader of the Council appears content. Good. Thank you. Great. Okay. Once again, we're asked to resolve that the Agile Working Policy, and I wonder whether it might be possible to rename that when it comes up for review. But anyway, so we're asked to resolve that the revised Agile Working Policy be adopted. Are we so agreed? Thank you. Okay. This brings us to my favourite item on tonight's agenda, which is the. I'm so enamoured of it, I've lost my voice. Excuse me. The pensions discretion policy. So we'll move on quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Your favourite and my favourite. So this policy is the policy that allows Surrey Heath to make certain, have a certain amount of flexibility with the local government pension scheme. The local government pension scheme has very specific terms and conditions, but there are elements in which we as a council have some discretion, and this policy outlines those areas. The policy, again, is one of those that must come back on an annual basis to this committee. That's part of our financial regulations and governance. There haven't been any changes this year. Indeed, there weren't any changes last year. And that's because the local government pension scheme hasn't changed, and therefore we haven't needed to review our discretionary position. Happy to take any comments or feedback, but as I say, there have been no changes to this policy. Thank you.
And we're led to believe there haven't been any changes for the last 3 years, was it?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. So questions, queries? No? Good. Once again, we're asked to resolve that no amendments be made to the current pensions discretions policy, and I'm sure we're happy to agree that. Thank you. That brings us to the work programme, I believe, is that you once again, Sally?
I think it probably is. Yes, it is me. Let me just get it up. There we go. Thank you, Chair, and apologies for that delay. So you'll see in the work programme that we've got a number of items at the moment booked for the 7th of March. In fact, I believe that date
28th.
It's incorrect. It should be the 28th of March. So I do apologise for that. We got the Joint Staff Committee and the Employment Committee confused. So that it's actually Joint Staff that's earlier in March. and we'll change that to the 28th of March. You can see that the areas we're coming to will be the pay settlement following the budget at full council, grievance policy, disciplinary policy, and of course the casual policy. I don't think there are any other areas on the work programme at the moment. So yes, and you can see there's some to be scheduled there that we haven't quite got to, but we're expecting in June.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have anything they want to add or questions? Any of that? It would appear not. So we're content to note that going forward. Yes. Good. Thank you. Right. That brings us to the end, I believe, of the first part of the agenda. There is one other item to be dealt with within the confidential section. So I therefore move that under section 100A 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the consideration of the business set out in item 12 on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Is that agreed, members? Okay. I don't believe we have any non-councillors present.
No,
So I now have to move on to